Oh, Canada. Oh, Canada. I'm doing this so out of order. I should have done the traveling podcast before these two, but oh well. So in this podcast, I'm going to be talking about, in this podcast, I'm talking about how to break your PB smallmouth. Partially by accident, I had a good chance. But how to still break it and how I broke it. And I'm going to talk about hiking and fishing in British Columbia, Canada. Great experience. Would recommend it. I could take a whole week and go back and just do that. All right, so let's get into this. Let's get serious. Like the last podcast I just did, you are going to fly into Victoria. You can fly into Victoria directly, or you can. It's a whole adventure. You can take a ferry from Seattle into Victoria. So whichever way you do it from the States, it's an adventure. You either fly into Seattle, take a boat, or you fly into Seattle, you take a small commercial prop plane to Victoria. It's like a little 30-minute hopper flight. Still fun though. Not gonna lie, that was fun. Or apparently there's also if you fly into Vancouver, apparently they also have a ferry. So there's no bad way to go about it. I mean, like, it's all an adventure, regardless of how you do it. And the ferries are big. You don't need to worry about getting seasick on these things. I've done a ride in this years ago in this area. The ferries they use in this neck of the woods are pretty big. They're not small boats. They carry freaking cars and trucks. You do not need to worry about, unless you get really sensitively seasick, then that is different. But if you're the average person, you only get seasick when it's decent chop, you'll be fine. There's all kinds of snacks. You can do all kinds of stuff. So that's fun. That's another option. Great idea, though. So, however you make your way into Victoria, Canada, you now end up here. Great. First things first. Let me actually do something. Let me go into the hiking first, and then I'll get into the actual fishing. So, the way a lot of these lakes are set up is they have a walking trail around the lake. Various lakes, these are like local community lakes essentially, but they're still really gorgeous. Like, they're worth the time of day to go to. In fact, they're worth the whole freaking week if I had the choice. And a lot of you northern guys may laugh, but I did not get a chance for my smallmouth. So, I got a vent on it this trip, and it was fun. So, with that being said, so there's your generic path, and you usually have about 50 to 100 feet of climbing in and out of spots around the lake, or you can just do rough terrain all the way around the lake and kind of just play around with the shoreline until you find another spot you can go fish. Like, there are certain spots you're going to be a cliff 75, 100 foot up. You're just not going to be able to fish that, obviously. But don't be afraid to wear some sleeves, wear some hiking pants, and push through and catch your PB smallmouth. I actually had to do that to go get to smallmouth, and it was worth it. So now that we've explained how the walk around goes, let us now hop into actual fishing stuff. You're going to need 2 setups. You could go with a third if you want to fish some heavier gear, but I managed to find that 2 setups would suffice for what I managed to do. I never even brought a third setup, even though I could have. So, your first setup is going to be your all-around, I call it my scouting out setup for this, meaning I don't know where the fish are. I'm using a little bit bigger baits. Understand, for me, a big bait's like a 3.5-inch finesse craw. But we'll say you're a little bit bigger baits you're going to scout around with. That's going to be on your 10 to 12 pound test. Straight mono, straight fluoro work just fine. And that's what I was using, like through sticks and rocks. So we're talking like your weedless Nico rig, weedless wacky rig on this setup. What else? If you want, I tried using top water on it. I got a couple blowups, but nothing successful. So if you want to try to throw a top water on that setup with straight, but if you're going to do fluoro, obviously, go straight mono. Because that's what I was using. Just because straight mono allows you to cross over between hard baits with the cushion of the treble hooks and your soft plastics. So if you want to throw a jerk bait, you could try to throw a jerk bait for smallmouth. I didn't get around throwing a jerk bait. You could have though. What else did I throw? Did I throw very much else? I don't think I did. Huh. So that's gonna be on your 10 to 12 setup. You could theoretically try to do the same thing like a jig in 15, like a spinnerbait in 15. I didn't get around to throwing spinnerbait. I wanted to maximize the amount of fish catches I had, and I'm not the greatest with the spinnerbait. But you are gonna have to have a finesse setup. This is gonna be I found you setup, meaning you're fishing around the lake and you see something. Like either you see the smallmouth in the water or you got bit and you missed that fish on the heavier stuff. You're gonna drop to a little fairy wand, medium light spinning rod. I go 15-pound braid with a 6-pound leader. You could, and in these lakes, there's not enough submerged grass that you don't need to worry about it. So you could go straight 6-pound fluorocarbon. But yeah, so some form of 6-pound fluorocarbon. I think 8 is too heavy for this kind of fishing, for finesse fishing. And understand, what I was talking about before, a lot of you guys would say that's finesse fishing. I'm talking 6-pound is a good finesse setup. You could even try to use 4. 4 is an adventure. 6 was an adventure, but 4 would be even more fun. So on this setup, you're going to use I was using a drop shot, little 1/8 ounce drop tie on weight as your drop shot weight. Up on it, you're going to have, say, a size 6, maybe a size 4 hook with those little 3-inch zoom tiny flukes. What could also probably work well with this as well is the trout worms. Like Powerbait and a few other companies sell like the trout 3.5-inch thin little worms. That kind of stuff. We're talking about drop shotting some really light stuff. And that is a great drop back. You don't know if you want to just double check if there's fish. So the few different applications for that setup, you want to double check if there's fish in that spot that you went through with a heavier setup. You saw something of smallmouth of various sizes. So if you see a little smallmouth go through, you can drop it back to him, shake it, and have him eat it. Or if you miss a bite, you can go back there with the smaller stuff and hopes to eat, and he'll probably eat it better. So that is the usage for that. Now, I covered the 2 setups, and on top of that, baits that worked. Finesse cross, like the Zoom crit. I like to heavy Nico rig. I've done a podcast on that before. Scout through, find if you can. I didn't get around to putting links, but finesse craw, Zoom critter craw is a good one. I know Yamamoto makes one. There's a few other brands as well. I think EM might make one as well. I actually have some here. So these are the little critter craws that Zoom makes. I would recommend like a green pumpkin color, like a more natural color, because we're talking incredibly clear water. And I'll get into that later. I enjoyed that. And I'll take that over big bass in muddy water any day of the week. So you have that on a weedless Nico rig, weedless wacky rig. If you're talking like 4-inch worms, I was wacky rigging like the Guggen Baits trick worms, and those work just fine. Anything else that I was working with? As far as most of my topwater, I mentioned I got bit on walking bait a couple times, moving it quickly, but nothing worth writing home about. And as far as the heavier stuff goes, that is it. On the lighter stuff, like I said, little 3-inch flukes, little trout worms if you could find them, little tiny stuff is what I throw on that setup. So I go super finesse. I've learned to fish super finesse. And on top of that, you are going to have, what am I saying? Yeah, rod, reel, lines, all that good stuff. Next is going to be how you actually fish for these things. I covered a little bit before of just throwing drop back baits, but like I said, the way I'm going to go back to stuff. So the way these lakes are set up, you have, there's 2 lakes near Victoria that I fished that I will vouch for. There is a Thetis, and there is elk slash beaver lake. It's two lakes merged into one, more or less, and they become the elk slash beaver lake. These are two local public lakes, both of which are allowed to easily fish. Uh, Here's the thing: I enjoy Thetis more because I wanted to go for mostly smallmouth, but elk and beaver lake is also a worthwhile thing. The difference between the two, elk and beaver, is if you want to do a multi-species run. So I had better luck catching not necessarily bigger or more fish, but I had success catching, like, say, a couple small large northern stray largemouth. There were some little yellow perch in there. There were some smaller smallmouth. They weren't that big, but you got a little bit of everything. That finesse setup is going to work well over there. Next, you are going to Thetis is going to be mostly smallmouth. There may be a few exceptions, like there were some bluegills and panfish in that lake too, but the bulk of what you were trying to go for is actually going to be smallmouth. With that being said, excuse me, I thought I saw something on my leg. With that being said, that's where I enjoyed the most. Both elk beaver on the southern end is a little more muddy. I didn't enjoy it that much for that reason, but Thetis was awesome. Thetis is a deep water lake, meaning off the shoreline you could be fishing 12, 15 foot. That's probably why it was a good summer lake, honestly. We're talking about fishing 12, 15 foot off the basically cliffs down into the water. So you have deep water, easy access to it when you're hiking along the shore, depending on the spot you go to. Some spots obviously are going to be 2 or 3 foot. Versus elk and beaver, max you're looking at, say, 5 or 6 foot spots off the shore. So it's a different perspective almost. And super clear. Like, we are talking 12, maybe 15 foot, and you can see the bottom if you squint your eyes and you focus. So we're talking about incredible clarity. So that is why 6 pound does pay its diligence. And on top of that, you are going to have, a lot of time you'll see these smallmouth. They'll cruise in little packs. You could drop down them, you shake it, and you get bit. And the fun thing I enjoyed a lot was you'd bring these I have a photo when you bring these smallmouth up and they fight and you see them in the clear water bulldogging on the way up, almost like a calico would. And I thought that was the coolest thing, just because you get to see the whole fight, and it was a whole spectacle, in my opinion. So I now understand why the northern guys like this stuff. I didn't get a chance to fully do smallmouth before, except for like one time in Washington State. But now I understand. And also, that was on bait. It wasn't on actual artificials. It's a fun spectacle. Smallmouth are aggressive. They will give you a fight similar in style to a calico. Although calico might fight a little bit harder. They might try to get little structures a little bit harder to go for. But smallmouth are, I would say, they're closer to calico. And leave a comment if you caught both of them so you can make this comparison too. Or say, not at all, I disagree. But from what I have found, they fight similar in style in terms of how they bulldog you. Largemouth kind of just like to cruise around and slug around until you land them. Even 3-4 pounders will do that on lighter stuff. Versus smallmouth will give you a run for your money. So, now, the story of how I caught my PB, that's what we're all here for. So I was walking around Thetis. It was the day before my flight. So that makes it even better. Meaning, I was like, all right, fishing in the saltwater was meh. I explained that on my last podcast. Fishing in the saltwater was meh. It wasn't that good. So I was like, screw this. I'm going to the lake I had the most luck in, the best successful spot for me that trip, which was Thetis. So I went back to Thetis, and I caught about 9-10 smallmouth that day, including 2 good-sized ones. So understand, my PB before this in Washington State was probably about a 3/4 pound, 1 pound fish. Nothing to write home about. About 12, 14-inch fish. Nothing too exciting. Yay! It was on a live bait, though. That was fun. Then, from there. So, on top of that, you now have... So now I went from that on cut baits and live baits as my PB. Now going over to artificial drop shot, and now I hook a 2. The first fish I hooked, I was being stupid. So I broke my PB twice in the same day, technically. I'll leave comments if you think you actually count this story. So the first fish I hooked, that was my PB. I didn't actually see him because he was so good camouflage in the rock. It was super clear water. But I then noticed second time around that he was kind of swerving around roughly where my drop shot was. I was like, oh, that's a good sized fish. So it's like, if you're swerving around, I'm going to hope and assume you have my bait. I popped and I set the hook. He took me around for a fun fight. I brought him up. My dumb goony ass decided to swing him on frayed 6-pound line. That was stupid of me. I wasn't thinking. It was weird footing on the side of the lake. I tried doing it. The line snapped. He technically went on the shore. So if you want, like I said, if you want to count it, count it. If you don't. Either way, I broke my PB properly. And then you managed to splash back in the water. It was a stupid mistake on my part. I understand. Like, you monster! You let him with the hook. I understand. It was a stupid mistake. That's that. So that was about a 2-pounder. So technically, if we want to count that fish, first PB break, second PB break. So that wasn't even it. That's not even the thumbnail fish. Then I kept hiking, kept covering more and more of the lake as I walked around, and you get some good exercise. You were hiking serious terrain doing this. So I fished this other spot, and there was these swimmers out in the distance. And I'm like, whoa! Because I then hooked this other fish. Same idea. 6, retied, 6, little drop shot, hooked it. And this fish took me for the same merry-go-round fight. More like a Six Flags roller coaster. But took me around for this fight. I eventually was like, you know what? I'm going to do... I was a boulder that I was standing on that was like this. So I actually had proper footing and I had proper ability to get down to the shoreline. I didn't have that before when like the branches and the roots were kind of like that. So it wasn't, or it was curved around. So for those of you listening, curved around. So it wasn't as easy to go to. With that being said, I managed to bring him to the side that was almost like a ramp. I had my boca grips and I was going to make sure I landed him properly when he was in the water. And I did so. Hence why he is boca gripped in the thumbnail. Same fish. And I was like, yes. And I weighed that fish, which I could tell was larger than the fish before it. So that was a second PB break in the same day. Okay, first, if you want to count, if you don't want to count the first fish. But for bragging rights and for fun, we'll call second fish. Understand, before this, I've lived in Southern California and I live in Texas. So you don't get a whole lot of smallmouth fishing in South Texas or in Southern California. So that's why I was all excited for the smallmouth fishing on this trip. I weighed the smallmouth on boca grips on like a sling sail with all the lines, not official like digital scale. He was about 2.5, 3 pounds. I was like, yes. So I broke it from, understand, before that day, my PB was about a pound. 3/4 pound to a pound. I then went from 3/4 pound to a pound to, in one day, right before my flight, to a 2 to a 2.5 to 3 pounder all in the same day. So that was fun. And it put the biggest smile on my face because about 24 hours later, I had a flight. Less. So with that in mind, caught and released that fish. Maybe hiked, caught another couple fish that were smaller. We're talking little half-pounders. Those are the bulk of the fish you find at Thetis, but still fun. Trace them back with a drop shot, and you'll have fun on them. So yeah, that is how I caught my PB in Canada. If you like this kind of stuff, like, comment, subscribe. Anyone, but if you've caught a smallmouth or northerners specifically, because I'm assuming most guys who smallmouth fish are from the north. Comment. PB smallmouth, inches, pounds, all that good stuff. All right. Have a good day, guys.